Okay, so I've been really been wanting to talk about the Switch 2 Direct for the past like 2 weeks now, but things came up. Last week was spring break. I attended Family Feud's audience. I tweeted about it, and yada yada. So many things were happening, but finally, I'm sitting here and I want to talk about that Switch 2 Direct because honestly, I thought it was phenomenal. I think it did almost everything right in terms of showing us what this new Nintendo console is all about. What's the difference between the Switch 1 and 2? What games are we gonna see? All that stuff. One of the biggest caveats was, of course, no pricing or kind of like, release dates kind of being vague, like Metro Prime 4 still 2025, stuff like that. But, slowly that information kept revealing itself after the Direct, like the pricing, region locking being back, game keys being a thing, and just so on and so forth. Like accessories now are being spiked up because of the tariffs here in the United States. So, it's just a bunch of things. But disregarding all of that, putting all that to the side, I just want to talk about this Direct and what it gave us and just my thoughts on it as I go through like all the things that went over. So sit back, put this in the background and just, I don't know, and I guess enjoy hearing me talk about this Direct, which I actually really like. And if you like this sort of thing, just subscribe, like it goes a long way, and I'd really appreciate it. So anyway, let's start. This Nintendo Direct started with Mario Kart World. This is our first game that they showed off. They also showed that off during the teaser of the first unveiling of the Switch 2 back in January. And we've all been super curious about what this game is gonna be like compared to like Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe, because that's like the biggest, most grandest Mario Kart up to this point, but we've also had it for like the past decade. And I think this trailer did a pretty good job at communicating like, oh wow, it seems like this game's gonna be quite grand. The Grand Prix are being revamped to be like this interconnected thing in this world. You can drive from race to race. Knockout Tour is like this actually isn't like F-Zero 99, if you've played that, where there's this mode where after certain races or laps, if you don't make it past a certain position, you're gonna be eliminated from the race. And seems like they kind of implemented that here in some way, which is really cool. I always like these type of modes. That looks really fun. There's 24 racers, which it makes sense why you would introduce this kind of mode. And I like that title, Mario Kart World. I really do. I like the way it panned out from the driving, showed the world, and it showed the title world. And I just thought that was really well done. It makes you feel like, oh, this really, it kind of feels like it is derived from Mario Kart Tour. In some ways, especially because Tour has like all those real life tracks, like New York, Paris, and that kind of stuff. It's like you're touring around the world, but oh no, here's like a fully realized Mario world where you can drive around and with free roam and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Now we've kind of since seen more about the game, so it's not like we've kind of already seen everything there is to see. There was that one Direct they showed, like, oh, we're gonna have a Direct on the 17th, and we saw the Direct finally, and it was just all that we've already known, so that's kind of funny. But just the Direct trailer itself I thought was really great. Okay, then after that they showed off the new faces at the Switch 2's helm, with 3 people at this time, which at this point we hadn't ever seen their faces. Probably have, like, if you look up staff members and stuff of past games, or dev teams and whatever. But this is the first time we're like seeing them actually speak. And first we have Koichi Kawamoto, which is the producer of the Switch 2, Takahiro Dota, which is the director, and Tetsuya Sasaki, which is a hardware design lead, which I found that very interesting. So him being here, also giving the presentation, just really gives you that impression that, oh, these guys really want you to like see what they have in store tech wise, like capability wise, with the Switch 2, what it's capable of. And that's why I feel like they also brought in the hardware design lead to also showcase that, because then we started seeing some of the features that the Switch 2 is gonna have, which the first was game chat. And I'll be real, everyone's already said it pretty much is Nintendo's take on Discord. even the way that it looks is Discord, and it's cool. I like it. I'm obviously gonna use it with like my friends and stuff. It's really neat. This is one of those things that I wish that the Switch 1 did as well. Like, it seems like such a no-brainer. But it's cool that it's here. The one thing I do slightly complain about is that the button that's on the Joy-Cons, there's a C button. That you have to press that if you want to go into game chat. Now, in the home menu, we have seen that there is like a game chat button you can press, so it's not just tied to just that one button on the controller. I just think it kind of sucks that there is there's a button on the controller that won't really work if you're not online or once the server's shut down at some point. But that's more of just a tiny nitpick. That's not really that big a deal. But I really like game chat. The other issue is kind of how bad the frame rate is when it comes to like your friends' cameras or your friends' footage. It's like 15 frames per second. It looks pretty bad, but I think kind of in a funny way. I get why it's like that. Apparently they said that it's like some kind of compromise that they had to make. Like, it was either a choice of making it smooth but maybe just being like by yourself, or it's gonna be like, oh, you can have all these people in your game chat, but you're gonna have to sacrifice the quality of their stream. So I'm like, it's fine. It's not like I'm gonna be looking at my friends' screens all the time. It's just kind of like them just being there to talk to me. So that's kind of there. I like game chat, but I think the cooler thing that I don't really see that many people talking about, which is actually kind of sad, is the game share. Game share is fantastic. This is basically like a weird hybrid of Nintendo DS download play. If you remember that from back then, pretty much you had your DS or 3DS and you took a game like, let's say, Mario Party DS. I would do this all the time with my brother and some friends, either Mario Kart DS or Mario Party DS. You would set up a lobby for some friends locally, and they could use the DS download play app, and it would, the game would send a partial portion of the game to those people, and then you could, play together. And it was a really cool feature even way back then, and I'm glad they kind of brought this back, because it wasn't really present during the Switch generation, but pretty much they're using, if I remember seeing one article, they're using technology from the Wii U gamepad, where it basically sends that signal the TV sends like another screen to the gamepad, so you can do that double screen thing. That's kind of how it works. It's projecting that onto the gamepad. So it's actually cool that they're using tech from the Wii U once again to implement a pretty cool feature that I think is honestly going to be one of my favorite aspects of Switch 2. For example, I'm probably going to get some games on the Switch 2, and then since my sister isn't really going to get a Switch 2, the games that aren't exclusive to Switch 2, I could just like game share to her, and it'll be really cool. I really like this. Okay, so then after those features, then we actually have a full breakdown of like all the tech stuff from the Switch 2. There's a bigger screen. The screen's gonna be 1080p, which thank you, that's what I wanted so bad. There's gonna be up to 120 frames per second, not just while docked, but on handheld too. That blew my mind. I simply just wanted 1080p, 60 FPS, portable and docked max. That would have satisfied me, but no, we're going full 4K 60 as like a max choice, and like 1080p 120 as a max choice. I'm like, I can't believe this. It's actually unreal to me just still thinking about it. Then of course we have the vivid LCD screen that has HDR, so it's not an OLED, but I'm glad they did put some a touch of good quality onto the LCD screen, so I won't complain too much about that. Then of course there's the Joy-Cons that are magnetic, which seem to have a tight grip. The bigger SL and SR buttons, thank you. One of my biggest complaints with the Switch 1 is the Joy-Cons because of how tiny they are, the buttons and everything. So holding it sideways, like with one Joy-Con, and pressing those shoulder buttons that it has was honestly so horrible. But so I'm glad those are a little bigger. larger sticks, which is also good. Again, like I said, the sticks buttons were just also small for me, but so this is a plus for me. And of course the mouse controls, they finally fully show the mouse controls, which I'll get that to in a bit, the improves. And then the rest of the stuff, it's kind of like typical stuff that it's not that big of a deal currently, but it's great that Nintendo's finally, also doing this. It's improved speakers, 3D audio, built-in mic, like all this stuff. I'm like, okay, that's great that finally Nintendo's stepping into the waters of this stuff. The larger stand is one of the things, the new stand, it's kind of one of the things that I don't really care about, because I kind of prefer the OLED's much like fuller stand. This one's kind of like just like a, I don't know, it doesn't seem as reliable as the Switch OLED's kickstand. There's 2 USB ports, which we've known about, and then the cool part, we finally know the storage, 256 gigabyte storage, which I was hoping at the least it would be 512 gigabytes up to a 1 terabyte. It's just a standard at this point, but Nintendo games are never usually that big. Yeah, Mario Kart World is apparently like 23 gigabytes if I remember, but Donkey Kong Bonanza is only like 10 gigabytes, so like, you can probably still fit a good portion of first-party Nintendo games in 256 gigabytes, but still, yeah, it's good. It's better than 64 or 32 gigabytes, that's for sure. I'll take 256 any day. And then, of course, faster loading times. They kind of showed that Yoshi's Crafted World, which is nice to see. That's going to be really helpful for a lot of games, but it's usually not that noticeable for me anyway. Yeah, the dock outputs at 4K, which is really cool. Again, something I did not expect was going to happen at all, but here we are. And of course, you need that fan ventilation to allow this kind of power, to go through. And of course, they reconfirmed the backwards compatibility with Switch 1 games, which is really cool. So then after all that breakdown, I think I'm actually still surprised at these specs and like tech and stuff from the Switch 2. Like, it goes above and beyond, again, what I would have wanted, or at least my ideal situation with the Switch 2. So I'm really glad that it blew my expectations away, and I'm still really happy about, with what we're getting tech-wise, or spec-wise, I mean. And then after all that, we finally have our look at the second game they showed off, which is where one of the controversies start with this direct. We have the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Oh boy, so this is basically like, it's like a glorified like interactive manual of the Switch 2. Like, it walks you, it's like you interact with a bunch of like these mini games, kind of like educational things that like teach you about the mechanics, the gimmicks, the specs of the Switch 2, the controllers and everything. And it's really cool if it wasn't paid. So this is a digital only paid game that's basically a glorified manual. So apparently it's like $10. No thank you. Even for $1, I probably wouldn't, because this is something that should have been packed in. It's really neat. I think it's cute and it has a lot of charm, and I get its purpose, but it should have been packed in like Astrobot was. Astro's Playroom, was packed into the PS5, and that's actually a full, video game. And enough about that. That was a bit of a stinker. So okay, hopefully they can recover, right? So then they start talking about Switch 2 game cards, which okay, they actually are red, which is really cute actually. And then another interesting aspect was the micro SD cards that are just going to be the express ones that are going to work only for the Switch 2, because it being a much beefier Switch, it's going to have a lot of faster loading times and stuff. So the Switch 1 isn't going to be compatible with these cards because they read a lot faster than the Switch can process it. Yeah, that's expected, and these are obviously going to be a lot more expensive, and you're probably going to need much bigger storage because of, you know, the bigger games that are now going to be available on the Switch 2, third party and first party. So, oh boy, storage is going to be a lot more costly, but, you know, it's understandable. And, you know, kind of smaller things that we kind of knew you would be able to do, the transfer data. Okay, Switch 2 Pro controller, yeah, we knew it was going to get one, and those back buttons are actually really cool, and thank you for putting an audio jack. Oh my goodness. Although it sucks because I literally just bought my Switch 1 Pro controller like several months ago finally, so I'm like, are you kidding me? They're going to release a new better Pro controller. But you know what? After that price increase, I think I'm good with my Switch 1 Pro controller. It's compatible with the Switch 2, so I'm just gonna keep using that. They finally give us the release date of the Switch, which is such a weird position to put the release date in. This is one of the issues of this Direct. The pacing of this Direct is kind of weird throughout it, and this is kind of one of the instances of that, like just kind of plopping the Switch release date right here, which is June 5th. Yeah, we all speculated it was either going to be May or June. I think June 5th is a pretty good release date, especially since kids are, you know, getting out of school for the summer break. It would be perfect for them to then be able to relax and be like, Mom, please get me the Switch 2. It just came out. We're not in school anymore. You know, it's gonna work out. You know, a lot of parents are gonna be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll get you the new system. Yeah, you did good in school, you got good grades, straight A's, okay, I'll gift you that Switch 2. So after that, we have the types of games that you'll be able to play on the Switch 2. You know, you have the Switch 2 games, the backwards compatible games on the Switch 1, and finally we got confirmation of the Switch 2 edition games, which is going to be also physical and digital available. And you can also get upgrade packs for them. So that's what I'm gonna do. It's really cool. So basically they're gonna take Switch 1 games and you're gonna be able to just upgrade them. You know, they're gonna run better, look better, have some extra content, as I'm gonna go over in a bit. But you know, they're also gonna have upgrade packs. So if you already have the Switch 1 version, you'll just be able to simply upgrade it. You know, like just buy an upgrade pack and that should be able to then be put on a Switch 2 and you should be golden. That's what I'm gonna do, because you know, I have games like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, you know, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I have all these. I haven't played them yet, so it's like, oh perfect, the Switch 2 is gonna beef these up and even give Kirby new content. So I'm just gonna get those $10-$20, you know, upgrade packs instead of buying the full retail release, which are gonna be like $70-$80. So you know, I don't want to buy those again for that much. I'd rather just get the upgrade pack. So I'm glad that's an option. So that's pretty cool. So some of the stuff they reveal for these Nintendo Switch 2 editions is, you know, Mario Party Jamboree with Jamboree TV, which is basically like a whole slew of extra options. Like and you're able to use like the Nintendo camera, the mouse controls. Like it basically is like, oh, all the new Switch 2 features and accessories and stuff, you'll be able to use it with all these modes, and that's really neat. I don't know if I'm gonna bother with that myself, or at least anytime soon, but that's pretty cool. Then we have, you know, Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. Those are on the cheaper side. I think they're probably gonna be like $10 if I remember. Yeah, those are more graphical and performance enhancements. There's also the Zelda Notes app, which I think it's kind of odd to just lock that away behind the Switch 2 editions, but it's whatever. I guess it'll be something I can take advantage of once I buy those upgrade packs. And then there's Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Star-Crossed Worlds. So that's like a whole expansion that they're adding just for the Switch 2 edition. And that's really cool. So the game never got DLC, but I guess this is sort of it. You know, this is sort of like a DLC like expansion in the form of this upgrade pack, which, alright, that's cool. I can't wait to enjoy that when I get to the game. And oh my goodness, the one that had me drooling was just that Metroid Prime 4 Switch 2 edition, which like you'll be able to play 4K 60 FPS or 1080p 120 FPS. Oh my god, you can choose. It's kind of like, that's the point where I'm like, oh my god, this company, it really has reached the point where, like, you know, Sony and Microsoft are with like these quality options, and you're gonna have these high fidelity games, and it's like, it just mind blows me again that we're finally at this point with Nintendo. I didn't think we'd get there that quick, like just like that, but it's really cool. Then the last one they showed in the Switch 2 editions is Pokemon Legends. I don't really care about that, honestly. It looks a little better, but honestly not by that much, but typical Pokemon. But it's cool that the option is there. And then apparently these are gonna have like, there's apparently gonna range, so it's gonna be like free ones. So probably a bunch of my first party games on Switch are probably gonna be in those free ones, where it's probably just gonna be slight touch-ups of performance and stuff, bugs fixes and whatever. Then the paid ones that are gonna be even more substantial performance increases, like Metro Prime 4, Tears, and Breath of the Wild, stuff like that. And then the ones that will include a lot more extra content, like Mario Party, Kirby. So there's like 3 tiers to these upgrades, and I think that's cool. So anyway, after all that Switch 2 edition stuff, we have, oh boy, possibly what could have been the worst portion of this whole direct, in my opinion. We have our second new IP, because that Welcome Tour technically is a new IP. It's a game, but this is technically the second new IP. And look, we all owe ARMS an apology, okay? I don't want to offend this game too much, but I'll just say, from what we've seen in this direct trailer and the two Treehouse days that it was featured in, it does not warrant a purchase for me whatsoever. This game seems pretty bare bones, even more so than ARMS. And I like ARMS. I think ARMS is good. But like, this game seems even more bland and like, I don't know, like content derived. It feels like something I'd have fun with maybe like for an hour max, and that's it. It looks neat. It's a very unique concept, sure, like, wheelchair basketball. It's really cool, and there's been people that I've really connected with it, on a personal level. I'm happy for those people. This is really cool, but this game, oh boy, I don't know. I kind of just wonder what they would price this at. This is like one game they have not priced yet. They've priced the Donkey Kong game, the Zelda games, Switch 2 editions, like all this stuff they've already priced. Not Dragon Drive yet though, which I'm like, why is that? But we'll see. I don't think this thing is worth anything more than like $20-$30 from what we've seen, but we'll see. Then finally after that, we have the first wave of third party, as my notes say here. So we got shown off a whole lot of third party that are gonna come to the Switch 2, and it's exactly as I expected. They opened with Elden Ring from the floodgates. I'm like, of course you would want to showcase Elden Ring first and foremost, right? Really cool to see that that's coming, and it's also with the expansion, so I might get that, but it's also a game key, so I'm kind of hesitant on that as well, but we'll see. I'll just rapid fire through these. There's Hades 2, which is cool. Street Fighter 6, which will have like extra content, like an exclusive mode and some amiibo. I do really want those amiibo. They look really cool, especially Luke. I love Luke. And then a Daemon X Machina sequel. I actually forgot this got announced. It's so funny. It got announced before the Switch 2 was revealed. This was announced a while back, but I guess it's also a Switch 2 game, so cool. I think it got a title. It was Titanic Scion, so okay. I completely forgot about the first game, but really cool that there's a sequel coming, I guess. Then Split Fiction, I told my sister this was gonna come. She's currently playing through It Takes Two with her boyfriend, and they're really enjoying it. So she's kind of curious on this. I'll buy it. I'll get it at some point, so then I'll game share it to her, so then we can play. Again, there's that game share. It's really cool. And so yeah, Split Fiction is cool that it got shown off here. EA Sports.
And now, EA is gonna be presenting EA Sports on the Switch 2.
Yeah, EA Sports! Sports games on the Switch 2! Now, Hogwarts Legacy, yeah, that's cool. That's coming. Again, another very expected port that they're gonna have here. Pro Skater 3 and 4, Tony Hawk, yeah, another one that's expected but really cool. Hitman World Assassination, which, you know, this basically includes all 3 main games. Really cool. You won't have to worry about the cloud versions on Switch anymore. Thank goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry for anyone that got any of those cloud versions on Switch. And the thing that one of my biggest hype announcements was a new James Bond by them, which, oh boy, I'm really curious of what that could look like. Then a Bravely Default remaster, which is really neat, but it sucks that it's a game key though. It's apparently like an 11 gigabyte game, and it's a 3DS remaster, and it's being put Square Enix. Come on, you know. Well, okay, you don't know better. You're pretty sheep, but I might still get it because like I have Bravely Default 2, but not the first one, so I guess I could at some point get that. But it being a game key is a bit of a letdown. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, you know, that's really cool. It's apparently, they already did Yakuza Kiwami on the Switch 1, which is really cool. So it makes sense that they're going to keep releasing these on the Switch 2. Since 0 is a bit of a more demanding game. And it's apparently going to have extra content, so, you know, pretty cool. Then, the last third party, and yes, I do consider this third party, is the new Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment game, which is pretty neat. I've heard that people really complain about Tears of the Kingdom story, so I don't know, maybe this might help alleviate some of that, but yet again, Age of Calamity, I've heard that doesn't really help Breath of the Wild story because of like it being kind of non-canon stuff, so let's hope that they don't do the same mistake here. So yeah, after that whole first wave of third party, we come to my next, like, this is probably one of my favorite moments in the whole direct. They're finally adding GameCube NSO. Oh my goodness. Finally. Finally, man. I was so excited when this was finally shown. Justify the expansion pass more for me, because I literally just got the yeah, so it's not gonna be a Switch 1 thing, it's just gonna be for Switch 2. And I'm like, okay, makes sense. The Switch 2 can probably emulate these games a whole lot better than the Switch probably could. They probably tested it out and it probably didn't work out well, so they've made this decision, and it's gonna be there available on launch day. Yes! The thing is, I literally just upgraded to the expansion pass late last year, so thank goodness I did, because it like justified that, you know, $80 expansion pass family plan that I had to buy. So this would totally be worth it. And then they showed off some of the games. That Path of Radiance, oh mama, that's gonna be great. I told a friend that really loves that game. I'm definitely gonna try it out. I'm so happy they literally showcased Wind Waker first. It was weird. I'm like, why Wind Waker? Why not like Mario Sunshine or something? So I'm like, hey, I'm an avid Wind Waker lover, so I was happy about that. F-Zero GX from the get-go. Oh my goodness, yes. I can't believe they have F-Zero GX day one. And Soul Calibur 2, which is honestly my favorite in the series. You know, no surprise there. But, you know, I still have it. But, you know, pretty interesting lineup of 3 games. And, you know, the lineup of upcoming games pretty much already almost covers all the games I could possibly want. Now, I'm gonna make a separate video talking about my wish list for GameCube NSO, so, you know, stay tuned to that. But yeah, they've already checked off a whole lot of them, like Chibi Robo and stuff, Luigi's Mansion, so really cool. And then there's also going to be a GameCube controller for the NSO, which I'm definitely getting, by the way. Definitely. I recently got the N64, you know, NSO controller, and it's been a godsend. Oh my goodness. I was trying to play beforehand when I first got the expansion pass with just the Pro controller, and it was horrendous, so I had to buy the N64 Switch Online controller, and it was a lifesaver. So this is a GameCube controller, which I absolutely love, and it's gonna be absolutely necessary to play these GameCube games. Alright, so then with that absolutely hype announcement out of the way, then the second wave of third party came, which then literally right after, yet another super highlight for me, which finally Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 which will be available on launch day for the Switch 2. I'm like, oh no way, like another mind blown with like another, launch date here, and I couldn't be happy. Like waiting years and years for those chapter 3 and 4. Oh my god, it better be worth it, Toby. I know it will. I love Deltarune to death, so I know it's gonna be worth it. Then Borderlands 4, Civilization 7, which I think that's also on the Switch 1, but yeah, you're probably gonna want to play the Switch 2 version, especially because there's gonna probably be mouse controls, and that kind of game will really benefit from mouse controls, And there's 2K Sports. And then comes probably the weirdest game shown off in this whole Direct, Survival Kids. Now, if you were watching the Direct live like I was streaming it, by the way, and Nintendo really messed up the stream by quite a bit. It was like the sound was behind by like several seconds, I think even up to like a minute at some point, and the footage froze at some point, but the audio kept going, and it was really messed up. I thought my stream was messing up. I kept backing out in and out of like their stream, but yeah, it was this game, Survival Kids, which looked already completely out of place in comparison to all the other games. No offense to Survival Kids, but it really does stand out like a sore thumb, especially because it literally froze on this game for a while on the stream. So I feel really bad for those devs. They probably got a lot of scrutiny for that. Then Enter the Gungeon 2. I think I've played the demo of the first one. It's kind of neat. This one also looks cool. It's like all 3D and stuff. There's a lot of like particle effects and things shown off in the screen to like really showcase the power of that Switch 2, which is really cool. So that's neat. Star Seeker, Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition. Really cool that that's being put on the Switch 2 just from the get-go. Another like launch title. So that's really cool. I'm not interested in it whatsoever. It's not my kind of game. I'm not interested, but it's really cool that they're gonna have that whole thing in cartridge. It's not a game key or anything. Day one, so that's really cool. Then of course, yeah, we all saw it coming. The FF7 remake Intergrade. So they're probably also at some point gonna put Rebirth on there, and of course the third part. So really cool that those are coming. I'm not particularly interested myself, but again, really neat that those are being shown off in the forefront of the Switch 2 Direct. Again, you want to grab these people's attention when all these big hitter games that have been releasing, recently in these other platforms, and now it's like on the new, it's like, what? Final Fantasy 7 Remake, Cyberpunk 2077, the new Street Fighter, Elden Ring, all on the new Nintendo system? That's nuts. Yeah, I know that they're ports of older games, but it's really cool. I don't know. I feel like it's very necessary to kind of showcase that Nintendo's really serious with like the power of this thing. And unlike the Switch 1, which is like chugging along, with very old tech at that point. Where was I? Oh yeah. Okay, so then came the highlight reel. And yeah, I'll quickly gloss through this. They showed Path of the Goddess by Capcom. Again, that looks really cool. I think that already released, so last year. Then the funniest thing in this highlight reel, they showed Silksong in the highlight reel. They finally showed Silksong after all this time, and it's gonna release in 2025 this year. Cool. I think it's funny that it was just highlight reel, but the fans went absolutely crazy over this. It's like the best news they've ever heard, so I'm very happy for them. But again, it's really funny that it was just in a highlight reel. They showed off the Story of Seasons game again, Goodnight Universe, 2 Point Museum I don't really care about. Wild Heart is cool that it's coming to Switch. Another expected port. Witchbrook. Again, I said in the Switch 1 Direct that I like the style of that game, but it's not really for me. Really cool that Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 is getting a Switch 2 version. It's called S. Really cool. Then there's the new Ruin Factory they've shown off a couple times already. That's getting a Switch 2 edition. The Marvel Comic Invasion, which you've seen already, still looks really cool. Star Wars Outlaws, that one's kind of unexpected, but at the same time, not really. Like, it's kind of out there. Like Ubisoft, they probably could have chosen maybe like an Assassin's Creed or something, like the new one that just released. But okay, Star Wars Outlaws, sure. So this one's interesting. Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening Complete Edition. So that's being put on Switch, and I think the reason why Switch 2 is because recently they literally just added, I don't know if those remember, but a month or so back, they added the Super Nintendo Nobunaga's Ambition games. There were like 4 of them on the NSO, and now you have this release. So I see what you were doing there, Nintendo, but honestly, I'm pretty sure most people kind of glossed over this though. I thought it was neat. Fast Fusion, those fast RMX people, they keep pumping these out at the beginning of these generations, and they always look so fantastic. I gotta give them a go. Shadow Labyrinth again. I'm really so interested in this wacky game. Such a strange game, but then, they showed off Raidou Remastered. Of course, it's getting a Switch 2 release as well. No, again, so weird that there is a new AI Somnium Files. I talked about that in the Switch 1 Direct already, but it still shocks me that there is a new AI Somnium File game. Cool. Although apparently the Switch 2 version is a game key, so again, that kind of sucks. So I'm probably just gonna get the Switch 1 version, so I'm glad that's also gonna be available in the previous console. Reanimal, which looks pretty interesting. Of course, Fortnite's gonna be there day 1. And then this is interesting. Not a lot of people talked about this right here, but Arcade Archives 2. So that means that these people, that work on these arcade archives, they're gonna continue releasing these on Switch 2 under the name of 2. And these are probably gonna be even beefier arcade titles like Ridge Racer. Really cool. It actually kind of makes me excited at what kind of much beefier and grander arcade games are going to be added on Switch 2. Really looking out for those. Of course, they showed off the new Professor Layton, which I think should have probably been shown off in the Switch 1 Direct, but whatever. They showed off the Tamagotchi Plaza. It's going to get a Switch 2 edition. And Humans Fall Flat 2, so not really interested in either of those games. And then, of course, after all that third-party stuff, they finally got to the very last, grandest third-party announcement, which was a new FromSoft exclusive Switch 2 game, The Dust Bloods. What a way to end the third-party announcements. I honestly think this was such a big announcement. I would have been fine if this was the last announcement of the Direct, because I think this is a huge deal. Now, we've heard more about the game since then. It's going to be like this PvPvE multiplayer focused game. No single player content, so I'm not sure how to feel about that personally, but it looked really cool. That footage, that trailer looked phenomenal. And yeah, really cool. FromSoft is not only giving us Elden Ring in a complete edition, but also an exclusive game from them. So wow, Switch 2 is gonna be blessed with From Software, I guess. And then we get the last bit of announcements, which are, first party. Nintendo finally swoops back in after all that excessive third party stuff. Again, kind of an issue with the Direct, which I'll touch on it a bit later. We have another first party announcement, which is probably my favorite one in the entire Direct. I really freaked out over this. It's a new Kirby Air Ride game. I still can't believe this exists. We're in a timeline where a new Kirby Air Ride exists called Air Riders, and this is I think literally the last time Sakurai worked on a Kirby game was Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube. So it's really cool that after all this time he came back to direct a Kirby game again, and it's Air Ride again. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Sakurai, so much. I remember he was talking about last year, or I think previous year, he was talking about how he was working on a game. He had proposed a game, and Nintendo approved, and they started working on it, and it was this. I can't believe the game he was working on was a new Kirby Air Ride. This was tailored to me specifically. Thank you so much. You could see my reaction. I'll have my reactions to the Direct in the description if you want to see, but I was really happy about this. I cannot wait. This will possibly be a day one buy for me. And then of course the very last announcement is the Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is a new 3D Donkey Kong after so long. Donkey Kong 64 came out in 1999. That is insane. More than 25 years ago since a 3D Donkey Kong game. And this looks absolutely phenomenal. I'm like, if there's one Switch 2 title which absolutely wowed me in its presentation, it's this one. The DK design, I think, looks great. I think his redesign looks awesome. It really works with the footage we've seen and the treehouse footage and everything. Oh my goodness, he looks so cool. The gameplay of smashing everything the game looks so vibrant. He's so expressive. I could gush about this for like forever, but you know, I don't want to drag this video out longer than it should. So yeah, really cool that that's the last announcement. No, it's no new 3D Mario, no Odyssey 2. But I would gladly take this over those any day. A new Donkey Kong 3D game. Oh my goodness, and it looks awesome. And then of course they remind us of the June 5th date of the release and the Mario Kart World Bundle, which, as you can kind of see with the pricing they've been doing, it is very obvious they're just pushing people to get this bundle, which, you know, you can get the game for $500 with the console, which would make the game $30 less than the actual game. So I see what you're doing, Nintendo, especially making the bundle limited release. But yeah, and that was the Switch 2 Direct. Man, yeah, I'd give this Direct like a B+, A-, you know, very solid 9 out of 10 Direct. If only they had just touched on the couple of those issues that I had, you know, I guess kind of make Dragon Drive a little more presentable and stuff. It possibly could have been one of the best. I still feel like some of the Switch 1 Directs did it a little better, but I'm just glad we finally know everything about the Switch 2. And again, the device itself, the Switch 2 itself, is phenomenal, and this Switch 2 Direct definitely really showcased that, at least. So there's that. Again, like I said in the beginning of the video, I thought that the Direct was fantastic. They did what they needed to do, showcasing the hardware and what the differences are between that and the Switch 1, and what are we expected to, like, you know, what are we supposed to expect when using this thing. And they hit it out of the park. Again, my expectations were blown out of the water, because I simply just wanted a device that could do like 1080p 60 smooth gameplay, but they went beyond that. They doubled the frame rate and doubled the resolution. Now, it's not going to be both doubled, you know, it's going to vary. They have like quality options for you, similar to how it is nowadays with like Xbox and PlayStation PC releases nowadays. So, you know, that's neat. They're going to give you those options again. So the hardware stuff was all really interesting. Some of the first party stuff was interesting. You know, a new Hyrule Warriors is pretty neat. That's not really first party, but you know, anyway, a new Zelda Warriors is pretty cool. The Donkey Kong game is a phenomenal, again, such a fantastic way to end a Direct. Like opening a new Nintendo generation with a new 3D Donkey Kong after more than 2 decades. I couldn't have asked for anything better, you know, anything more than that. And also a new Kirby Air Ride. Like, oh my god, this Direct, and like the last Direct, the Switch 1 Direct, gave me New Rhythm Heaven. So like GameCube NSO, like, oh my goodness, bro, like they are feeding me so well. So yeah, a lot of the announcements are cool. There's Dust Bloods, you know, so FromSoft started the third party showings and ended the third party showings with them, and I think that was such a powerful thing to do, because it's like, not only are we going to give you one of the biggest games ever, finally, Elden Ring, but you're going to have an exclusive game, and the way they delivered it, it's just really great. I will say though, one of the problems with the Direct itself was the lack of pricing, which we kind of see why they were very, you know, they didn't mention anything like that, and a lot of vague release dates, you know, Pokemon Legends, ZA, and Metroid Prime 4 still being 2025 it's kind of strange, but I can kind of see why, because we now know that they're making Switch 2 editions of those. So that makes sense, but at the same time, really want to know when those, you know, come out. And it wasn't just those two. There's like a lot of still like 2025 releases coming, but also the pricing would have been good to know. Also would have been good to know about game keys. You know, when they talk about the types of games you could play on the Switch 2, probably would have been a good idea to let people know from the get-go that game keys are going to be a thing we're going to expect. But you know, at least we know now. and we've been learning more about them as time goes on, so that's good. But so yeah, the pacing could have been better. I think that so much third party was in that like middle portion of the direct all the way to like near the end. So I think, like, for example, they stuck Kirby and Donkey Kong right next to each other. I think they probably could have taken Kirby and lumped them somewhere in the middle of like the first wave of third party or the second wave. Probably the second wave. You know, you have the GameCube stuff, then a couple of those third parties, then Kirby, then Highlight Reel, then Donkey Kong. Then the first wave of third parties, you know, the Elden Ring stuff and Cyberpunk and all that stuff, you could have put Dragon Drive somewhere in there. I don't know, it could have just kind of broken up the humongous amount of third parties. And again, it's a positive that there was so much third party. Yeah, I know that most of it is just older stuff already shown, already in other consoles and platforms and PC and stuff. But of course, you know, there was a couple of new things. You know, the stuff that they just recently revealed in the Switch 1 Direct. You know, that's neat to see that stuff again. You know, you have Silksong finally showing off. It's in the highlight reel, which is funny, but hey, it's finally releasing this year, so that's neat. And of course, a new FromSoft game exclusively for Switch 2. So there was some new stuff, quote unquote, you know, for the most part, third party wise. And I guess another negative would be obviously the paid manual, interactive manual welcome tour. That's such a letdown, especially after we've learned that it seems like it's probably gonna be $10. No thank you. And that Dragon Drive just looks super bare bones, and the control of it's just not for me. The way you have to use the mouse control to like back and forth on a flat surface and then like use the motion to shoot the hoop. It seems even I would rather swing my arms in arms with the motion than do that any day. But besides that, everything else, oh yeah, Mario Kart World was definitely a plus, just showing off from the get-go and seeing the new faces. I'm glad that they actually showed us the ones at the helm of this new system, especially like how they have the hardware lead dev, the director and producer. Really nice to see them. We're gonna have to really I can't speak today. We're going to have to really become more familiar with these faces as we're going to see them more often. Kind of how we got used to seeing Koizumi and, you know, during the beginning of the Switch era, you know, he was at the helm of the Switch, but now we have these three. So, you know, welcome to they've been at Nintendo apparently for a long time, so they're veterans, but I wish them the best of luck with this new system because it's the past couple of weeks has been kind of rough if you've been online seeing all the announcements, all the doom and gloom, the doom posting. But hey, the pre-orders are finally up next week on Thursday. Definitely still going to pre-order. Not going to get Mario Kart, I'm sorry. None of the accessories, they're all getting bumped up here in the US because of, you know, the tariffs. I don't really want to mention them, but yeah. So none of that stuff. I'll stick with my Switch 1 Pro controller that I just got a couple months back. I'm good with that. I hope my Joy-Cons don't drift too soon or wear down, because almost $100 for Joy-Con is honestly highway robbery in my opinion. I will definitely try to get Donkey Kong and Kirby day one, but I don't want to get them for $70. Now, we don't know the date for Kirby yet, but Kirby Air Riders, but I know it's probably not date, but price. I know it's going to be $70 though. So I want to use my like, hey, good thing I have GameStop Pro, because those points I can use to like lower the game down a bit to kind of justify the day one, at least a little more. And I'm definitely getting some of those Switch 2 editions, the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby. And if I ever get my hands on Mario Party Jamboree on like a discount, then I'll get, I think that's actually the optimal way to do it. Get the Switch 1 versions of some of these for cheap somewhere, used for like a lower price, $20, $30, and then get the upgrade pack so you can pay for a Switch 2 experience for a lot less, instead of just going to retail and buying those $70, $80 Switch 2 editions of those games. That's just what I'm probably gonna do, but that's me. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I gotta say about the Switch 2 Direct, and kind of touching up on a little bit of the stuff that was throughout the, you know, the past 2 or so weeks post direct with the doom and gloom. What do you think of the Switch 2 Direct? Is there anything specifically that you're really hyped for? The system? Are you still gonna pre-order it? You're gonna get Mario Kart for $80? I mean, if you are, that's you. You know, I'm not gonna shame you or anything. If you want to do it, then go ahead. Are you gonna get the new Donkey Kong? Any of the third parties really catch your attention? Again, a lot of those third parties were announced as game keys, like Street Fighter 6, Elden Ring, and Bravely Default, and those three specifically, I was so excited to want to get, but I don't really know if I want to, put my money on game keys, because once this, yeah, you can sell them and trade. I can probably make a whole separate video about that anyway. So I guess look forward to that if I do it. But yeah, if you like this kind of thing, long-winded discussions, if you bother to watch all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. A like and subscribe would go a really long way, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.